Here's a fun fact for you. Who knew that it would take a cover by Lindsay Sternley to do the Assassin's Creed theme, plug, to really get me curious about Assassin's Creed? Took me a long time to figure out that it was actually a video game, figures. I found the cutscenes and I went through the story. Well, you got to understand the first thing that I'm never really a gamer and, well, I don't play games ever, but it broke the stereotypical mind really of a non-gamer in my mind that video games were never really producing good quality story. After watching throughout the whole thing, thanks to the catching up with the exposition prologue with John Delancey, epic. As I was getting more involved in the story, I really admired and loved the personality and the concept of the character Connor Kenway.
I smell boyfriend material.
I regret nothing for this meme. Speaking of which, the internet pretty much crucified Connor Kenway's character, which is pretty understandable if you understand what was going on back in 2012. It was right after the release of the Ezio trilogy's conclusion and with After Embers, so of course all the AC fandom was going through the grieving process of after 3 years, many DLCs, 3 games, 1 conclusion movie, and possibly several fan comics and fan arts later, Connor had a very large shadow he was in, and a lot of expectations from the fans. But then over time, I began to realize that one reason why the fandom was unsure was, well, because he was stereotyped early on. But that would be probably something for a supplement video later on. But in the meantime, let's give a little more love to Connor Kenway and his birthday today. Okay, before I get into Connor's story more, I may as well, since I'm not going to do a supplement video really, realizing my time schedule here, I may as well address the elephant in the room of Native American stereotyping. In fact, the film industry and even the radio and TV, especially in kids' programs, were not given kindly to Native American cultures. They've been stereotyped so much it makes you wonder if Disney for a while was going racial or any other program was really stereotyping them.
Now you know why the red man's red.
Now, fortunately, for the past over 25 years or so, the Native Americans were given a better chance on showing off their own culture through their own individual movies, TVs, and even screenwrite plays. In fact, quite recently, even in miniseries and TV series and recent movies, they have been given a better portrayal in the realism of the Native American cultures. But the point is, I am a big support of really showing the true culture of the Native Americans. This coming from someone whose uncle came from that type of culture, which I think that's one of the reasons why it's drawn me to Connor as a character. Because he is very identifiable, no matter what race you are in, whether you're white or Native American, you're African American, you're yellow, you're green, you're rainbow colored mean, whatever it takes. People have a sense of identification with especially character. And I think Connor was the gentlest introduction to me on the Assassin's Creed series, because really, I've learned a lot about the assassins like Connor throughout the story. But let's not get into a little personal life here. We're going to talk about our Connor boy. And let's not forget that his basic story started with that one fateful day. There is no denying that without a shadow of a doubt that little Connor would experience through great tragedy that one fateful day. And yet he originally just wanted to go out and play hide and seek. But of course, the ultimate king of Greaseball, Charles Lee, and all the Templars went over there, interrogated him, giving him this long speech. And during that time, I even admit, like most of the fans wondered, where was Hatham in this? It wasn't until after reading Forsaken we found out that Hatham was really out looking for his sister Jenny after finding out information.
What is your name?
Charles Lee. Why do you ask?
So I can find you.
That's a lot of guts and grit from a 4-year-old little boy. And yet, what went wrong with the generation of today's 4-year-olds? Though many fans have commented about this issue, it wasn't really an issue, but you gotta understand that in the Native American cultures, even during that time period, 4-year-olds have a little more education than what you've seen of today. At least with little Connor, he had seen somehow that these men were a threat. And even in the minute when he was knocked out, and then suddenly came to a village being burned thanks to Washington's army, I know, spoiler alert, but yet he presumed because of the danger that he faced and witnessed from the Templars, he figured that they were responsible, hence planted the seeds on why he wanted to go after Charles Lee.
Charles Lee.
Throw me a nickel every time somebody uses that. But this leads also, of course, to the death of Zio, and the fact that she sent him away, and yet it was still today one of the saddest moments in AC history. You can imagine on how little Connor felt in the years after that, at least by 10 or so, when he had to face without having a mother to grow up. We don't really know what his life was like growing up. I guess the closest thing we get was his village elder, which I could guess is probably his grandma or third aunt or whatever. But yet in time you get to see he had to grow up really fast. And it's really surprising because in the results in his later life when he had the 2 fathers in his life. Now, before we get to the elephant in the room about Haytham and Connor, let's focus upon Achilles. In the events of Rogue, if we go by that timeline, Achilles already lost his son and the Brotherhood right under his rule. So you can imagine after being injured as well by Haytham, figures, we've realized that Connor had a lot to face, especially right in the beginning with the introduction. Geez, with some of the dialogue, it makes you think that it could be Achilles' answering machine.
I apologize if I've been unclear or otherwise confused you with my words. It was never my intention to mislead, so let me try to clarify. Get the hell off my land.
Even though Achilles had managed to take Connor in as the apprentice, one thing to describe about the relationship.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. And yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot.
And that's your Hamilton reference for the day. There were multiple times where Achilles and Connor would butt heads so many times, but yet it's a healthy relationship growth because you get to see the different torn ideals. Because if you think about it, you have a young, ambitious assassin wanting to get rid of the Templars, not just to protect his people, but to regain back what the Brotherhood had lost in the events of Rogue. But yet Achilles was still scarred, and that he had the injury to prove, since back in Rogue, Haytham pretty much was the one who shot Achilles in the leg, even though after Shay had spared him. It's pretty much a huge contrast, because if you think about it, look at the comparison of Achilles' behavior toward his apprentices from Rogue to AC3 with Connor.
Could have been avoided if you'd only listened to me.
Disrespectful to the end.
Yeah. The world's moved on, boy. Best you do too.
I will not leave, do you hear me? I'm never leaving.
Achilles wanted to be sure that the Brotherhood would not fall under the same trap that they had those years ago in the events of Rogue. And yet he has a strong sense of caring for Connor in his Achilles kind of way. But yet as he degraded on health, we get to see that he was starting to be at peace, knowing that the Templars will finally get what they deserve and that the country would be at peace. And then when Achilles dies, it's a really sad and tragic moment for all of us, for we wondered right before Rogue was released, we get to see that Achilles was finally put to rest, especially through all the heartache. And one of the joys was gaining the son that he thought he would never have again at that point. But I bet you all want to get to the heart of the matter. Haytham and Connor. Ooh boy, now this is the ultimate battle of sassiness and ideals.
Do you propose we do march in there and demand answers?
Well, yes. Connor, little help here? I will wait here then.
Of course you will.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like me to come along and hold your hand, perhaps? Provide kind words of encouragement?
Like I mentioned a lot in Forsaken and my Deep in the Novel review, Haytham had a lot of sudden catching up knowing that he had a son right when after the Boston Tea Party. And that it was an amazing fact that he finally connected the dots and then he started to see that Connor was indeed his son. Now, I couldn't understand that the game when it was released right in the prison scene, he could have just stopped and just say, "Hey, that's my boy! Release him! Let's interrogate him so I can have a good excuse for more character development!" I will admit that was the first thing in my mind, but I think it was paced perfectly. And especially if you read Forsaken, you know that he had some paternal desire to care for Connor by throwing out one of the daggers to cut off the noose from Connor's neck. But it wasn't until right 2 years after that, if you know by the game's timeline, that when Connor and Haytham finally partnered up to go after Church, we get to see a lot of the ideals and battling of who is right and who is wrong. And of course, you gotta admit that there were some pretty tough scenes about different ideals.
The people have made their choice, and it was Washington.
People chose nothing. It was done by a group of privileged cowards seeking only to enrich themselves. They convened in private and made a decision that would benefit them. Oh, they might have dressed it up with pretty words. That does not make it true. The only difference, Connor, the only difference between myself and those you aid is that I do not feign affection.
I could do a political follow-up supplement video based upon that alone. In fact, I will in the future. But the biggest betrayal of Haytham as a parent was how he revealed Washington's army's treachery right back in 1760. I wasn't sure what Haytham was really thinking at the time until, Forsaken was released. Oh, for heaven's sake, just go to the Deep in the Novel video! I guess Haytham really wanted to seal Connor's view about Washington in a more diminished way, especially when it comes to the flaws and the truth, seeing that Washington and his army was really the one responsible for Zio's death. But one thing I really enjoyed about Connor was that he still held on to his ideals and that he was still pretty scarred by Charles Lee and the Templars' effects, and that I loved that his true loyalty was really to his people.
No. You and I are finished.
Son.
Do you think me so soft that by calling me son I might change my mind? How long did you sit on this information, or am I to believe you discovered it now? My mother's blood may stain another's hands, but Charles Lee is no less a monster, and all he does by your command. A warning to you both. Choose to follow me or oppose me, and I will kill you.
And of course, Haytham's death was indeed really tragic, and even Connor later, if you read Forsaken, deeply regretted killing Haytham. Even before then, he didn't want to kill Haytham. And I will be discussing more of that probably in the Haytham video coming in December. But that is a huge story, for Connor is a major part of the regeneration of Kenways. It's amazing what this family went through. Starting from Edward, then had some downward contrasts. But I think the story of Black Flag was a major contrast on Edward and Connor's story because their personalities are both very different. Unlike Edward, Connor is very caring and would put others before himself, while Edward had high ambitions and would not have a second thought about others, except for the exception of Caroline maybe, but in the later years. But this is also a major blueprint too for Connor to set footsteps for the 4-game Kenway saga. Assassin's Creed 3, Liberated, Black Flag, and Rogue. They set all in ties and connection between one family line in general. I mean, it would have made sense if it would have started with Black Flag first, but I think Assassin's Creed 3 with Connor's storyline, we get to have a better appreciation with Connor after seeing Edward's character. Now, nothing wrong against Edward or anything like that, but it also makes you think about other things for this family line saga as well. Many fans have wondered, speculated, headcanoned, and even did alternative universes in Tumblr and DeviantArt on what would have been like if Haytham would have stayed with Zio. The closest thing we ever get really was in the Tyranny of King Washington with this alternative universe.
My father left those for me.
He was part of an order. A secret brotherhood.
I know who my father was. And I know what those are.
Now, I would have given my own headcanon of what allegiance Haytham would have been but I don't think it would have made a difference, because with Connor, he has his own foundation. Whatever allegiance he would have liked, he still held on to his native roots though, with a little bit mixture of the Kenway bloodline as well. And really, it doesn't matter what pedigree he is, because he is definitely a one-of-a-kind Kenway. Now, of course, there's one subject matter we gotta face about. What about Connor's future? What happened? Especially with the Abstergo Employee's Handbook. I'm going to have to protest against the fact that he was a ruthless killer, his wife left him, and he died alone. That just didn't make sense, and I have the living proof on that, because Abstergo being Abstergo, they've actually made alternatives with Ezio's, Altair's, and Edward's as well. And pretty much it's nothing but hogwash on there, which it gives Connor fans a lot of hope that hopefully Connor just had a better future. And I'm looking forward to that answers with all the Connor fans on his own Reflections microcomic coming this June. And hopefully we as the fans get to know some answers. But in the meantime, Connor is pretty much one of those characters that was a diamond in the rough. Possibly one of the most gentlest characters, but yet the most serious. And it really hurts in my heart of all places that Connor gets less love because people think he was so bland and boring. But they never get to go deep into his characteristics and stories, because he could have been bitter and everything with all the crap that had been thrown to him. And yet for him to step up and even put himself behind others and just help them and be able to aid even though they don't ever give anything back to him in return, he is just a gem to me. And I hope in his birthday that he gets all the best wishes and the love in the world. I am the Dark Horse of KC. Have a good, creative, and blessed day. Hey guys, Casey here doing the charity shoutout, and in this video we're going to feature the Mustaine Heritage Foundation. Since 2001, the Mustaine Heritage Foundation was established with the mission of helping increase the number of successful adoptions of America's Mustangs that are under the management of the Bureau of Land Management's Wild Horses and Burro program. Set in Nevada, their mission was to give full awareness about the American Mustang and to be sure that those who are up for adoption have successful homes. They even started giving out programs to where trainers can have 100 days to train a Mustang that has never been touched or ridden in its lifetime, and to display it to show that Mustangs can be ridden and that they are the true spirit of the West. This organization has been wonderful on giving out full awareness and successful adoptions, though there are still Mustangs that are waiting to be adopted and to be gentled today. They also do this through donations and through awareness going on. So if you want to preserve America's beautiful creatures, go to their website, look on their YouTube page, and donate today.